But there was one thing that stood out to me that I feel like is concerning for now and for the entirety of this 2021 season. It was one of the starters in this mock game. It was that you saw Stone Forsythe, friend of the Danny and Gallant radio program, at left tackle in that mock game. Nothing against Stone Forsythe, but goodness gracious, that is terrifying. That is not good. You want to have Duane Brown back in the fold. We've been wondering what's been going on with Duane Brown. After the mock game on Sunday, Pete Carroll was asked about Duane Brown's current status, if he's unhappy that he doesn't have a deal yet.
Duane and I are doing great. In our conversations about stuff, he's been great, and he's making a statement. You know, he's making a statement and about what he feels he needs to have happen. So
Pete understands. Pete empathizes. The Seahawks probably think, okay, yeah, Duane Brown's done a really good job for us. This is the guy who had knee surgery to play for us in the playoffs and has been an unbelievable rock on that offensive line, gutting through injuries, being as good a pass protector as he is a mauler downfield. But at the same time, they're probably looking at things and saying, this is a guy who's going to turn 36 at the end of the month. And in the last year of his contract, do we really want to give him more money, another deal for the future when we're not 100% sure if he's going to be able to get through this season? And that's where the problem begins, because you heard Pete Carroll say that Duane Brown's making a statement. He's sort of making a statement by holding in, by showing up to practice, but not actually practicing. He can make a much bigger statement, and he has made a much bigger statement in the past. If you remember, when he was with the Houston Texans, this is the guy who sat out for half of a season before finally playing in that unbelievable Seahawks-Texans game before the Texans, the next day, traded him. I remember speaking with him that Monday when I was working in Houston, asking him about his future with the team, and only a couple of hours later, all of a sudden, he had been shipped off to the Hawks. And since then, he's been really good. You need this offensive line to be at 100% going into the year. You need it to be that way. If you are all in for this year, Duane Brown needs to be in the fold. Period. He has you in a situation that isn't good. Look at your tackle situation right now. In fact, just look at your offensive line. Ethan Posick's dealing with a hamstring injury that he re-aggravated in practice on Friday. Jamarco Jones is banged up. Cedric Oblihi, your backup swing tackle, he's banged up. That's why you had Stone Forsythe out there. You already are dealing with missing bodies on the offensive line. You can't afford to be missing Duane Brown, too. And look, things can get better over the next couple of weeks. We're early in the preseason. We haven't even played a preseason game yet. But take a look at the future, too. Duane Brown is a free agent at the end of this season. Maybe he comes back. You're not going to franchise tag him at 36 years old. I would doubt, at the very least, that you would go down that route. But you want him there for the first 8 games of the season, and he might hold out for the first 8 games of the season. That is a real threat, a legitimate threat with him more than anyone else. He has done it before. And I want to make sure that that guy is in the fold right now. Pete Carroll was asked if Duane Brown would miss games. Here's what he had to say yesterday.
I don't know that. He's not going to play in preseason. He wasn't going to, so that's not going to make a difference right now.
So that's Pete Carroll's perspective. But what's Russell Wilson's perspective? The same guy who criticized the offensive line earlier this offseason. Maybe that's a factor in Duane Brown deciding, yeah, I'm not going to show up for practice. Maybe not. Who knows? But Russell Wilson was asked his opinion about Duane Brown's absence and if Duane Brown deserves a new deal.
I mean, not having Duane Brown out there is a pretty significant deal because I think he's one of the best left tackles in the game. There's no arguing. I think he's as good as it gets. There's nobody more athletic, more talented than he is. Age is just a number. He looks like he's 28, 30 out there. He's really exceptional. So smart and physical. Understands the game, and I think people fear him. Just be honest with you. When they're rushing him and playing against him. So we definitely want to be able to get him back out there. And we got to figure that out because we need Duane Brown.
He's 28, 30 years old in Russell's mind. People fear him. I mean, we know how Russ feels about this. Russ does not want to have any limitations to that offensive line going into the year. And a guy who's getting sacked 40 times a season who is now going to play in an extra 17th game, he's going to want to have his left tackle out there. Now, I'm not saying you make this move to make Russell Wilson happy. That's not a smart way to operate as a football team. But I am saying you want to have your team all in for 2021, don't you? Because Doesn't the future of this team entirely depend on taking a step forward from where you were last year? I don't know if you're going to take that step forward if you're missing Duane Brown for a long period of time. If you don't have Duane Brown for the first 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks of the season or so, are you going to have the best possible chance to give yourself home playoff games in front of the Lumen crowd, which was fantastic yesterday? They were booing kneel downs. That was hilarious. Are you going to give yourself the best opportunity to run the gauntlet? I know the Buccaneers did what they did, going on the road before playing the Super Bowl in their home stadium. But that's an exception. You want to be that team to get a first-round bye, if not to get a home game or a couple of home games along the way in this playoff run. And if you don't have Duane Brown there, a couple of sacks could be the difference. A pass rush that gets in Russell Wilson's face and makes him look the same way that he looked against those cover 2 defenses against the New York Giants, against the Los Angeles Rams towards the end of this past season. That can happen without Duane Brown on the field. So I say you get this deal done some way, somehow. And I know it's not practical, but practical be darned at this point. You need to find a way to make sure that you are at 100% going into the season. And I'll be honest, I'm a little concerned about the Seahawks' offense's ability to stay 100% over the entirety of this coming year. I mean, think about it from this perspective. Yeah, you might have one of the best cores of talent, skill player-wise, in the league. You got Russell Wilson. You have Chris Carson at running back, arguably top 10. You have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, arguably number 1 wide receiver tandem in the game. And you have solid tight ends. I think you have, when healthy, an average offensive line. But there isn't a whole lot of depth. And we've seen, in the case of both Tyler Lockett, who seems to not be 100% either of the last 2 years, or Chris Carson, who just gets hurt a lot because of that physical, aggressive running style that he runs with. And then you have the offensive line, too, where that's just a position that lends itself to getting hurt. I mean, all it's going to take is potentially one domino, one card being pulled out of this house of cards, and all of a sudden, what happens? Do you really want to start without one of the most important dominoes, important cards? Because that's what Duane Brown is. I don't want to risk it. It's not the smartest thing in the world to give a 36-year-old tackle a contract that would potentially be a giant albatross for you, anchor for you next year if Duane Brown gets hurt along the way this coming season. But what's your other option? How are you going to get a tackle for next season? You don't have a first-round pick, and the only tackles that are going to be available for you in free agency are going to be guys that no one wants to pay. You're going to have to overpay for those guys because you're going to get into bidding war with all these other teams that say, oh, look, I need a tackle. You don't want to get into that because you're going to end up with someone like Nate Solder. And when you get a Nate Solder, guess what happens? You don't want to have Nate Solder because you're going to overpay him.